Hi, I'm Jim Dodge, trustee here in Orland Park. Thanks for joining us and welcome to another edition of Orland Park in Focus. We have a very special guest today, Illinois State Treasurer Dan Rutherford. I'm very pleased to introduce a special guest, Dan Rutherford. I had the pleasure of meeting Dan a number of years back when he was an Illinois state senator, and he is now the state treasurer for Illinois. So with that, let's have a conversation with Dan. So Dan, could you tell everyone about your background and
Sure.
what the office of treasurer does?
Well, first of all, it's good to be back in Orland Park, so let me start off with that, and especially get a chance to see you, Jim, and later on we'll get a chance to talk with Brad. But I'm a businessman, private sector. I'm from Central Illinois. And I served 25 years as a vice president of a company called ServiceMaster Corporation, which is a Fortune 100. And during that time, we also acquired a company called Terminex Pest Control, True Green Lawn Care, and Mary Maids. And it was a multinational company, but we also dealt with small little businesses, franchisees. And the reason I tell you that is because not only did I serve in the Senate, as you had mentioned, but being a private sector businessman, I think it helps lend, let's say, a little bit of a different perspective on how government should be, and especially that in the office of state treasurer.
Yeah. Can you talk? So thank you for that background. Can you tell us more about the sort of the week in the life of a state treasurer and what the office is responsible for?
Well,
you have a lot going on, but if you could talk us through that, that'd be great.
All right, let's just start off with, just say that you got up in the morning, Jim, and you're looking in the mirror, and you've got your razor, and you're about ready to shave, and it hits you. You're the treasurer of the most financially stressed state in all of America.
Oh yeah.
Now what would you do?
I'd panic.
I would put that razor down. It's tough. Now I knew what I was getting myself into, but from the constitutional obligation. So
right?
let's just what the Constitution says. I'm the gentleman that's responsible for the investment of the state portfolio. And it's about $10 billion now. And that's bond proceeds, that's motor fuel tax, that's PACE, Metra, it's tollway, all of those kind of fees and everything. So I'm responsible to the investments. And the three priorities, and I know it sounds a little bit lighthearted when I say this, but really, truthfully, the first priority of the state treasurer is don't lose the portfolio.
Don't lose the money, right?
Don't lose the money. And we've seen, unfortunately, the market has had that happen to some people. So that's the number one priority. So that means then my investment strategies are extremely conservative.
Right.
Okay. Second priority then is liquidity, so that we have the cash available when the time comes to pay the certain road bonds, or for that matter, for transfers to the local government distributive fund to your communities. And then the third priority would be that of the return on interest. Now, there are many other things that the treasurer does now beyond what the Constitution says because of the statute. And it's iCash and Bright Start and those kind of things, but primarily it's the investment portfolio.
Right. I think most people probably don't understand the intricate workings of what the Constitution dictates you do and all the actual daily practices. So thank you for that background. You mentioned something that I want to pursue. I call it Dash for Cash, but I think the official name of the program is the iCash program.
Right.
So tell us about that, and then tell the folks in Orland Park how they can reach out to your office if they have a question.
Let me give you an example of how it gets to me first, how that asset or property gets to me, because that really kind of helps understand what this is. Let's say Grandma opened up a lockbox at a financial institution and put in Grandpa's gold coin, a stamp collection, and a Beanie Baby.
Right.
Okay. A collectible Beanie Baby, and Grandma moves on in life and went to a nursing home and let's say passed away. That financial institution for 5 years tries to find Grandma or the family members.
The relatives. Okay.
Okay. If they can't find them after 5 years, by law they're obligated to turn it over to me, the state treasurer. Okay. It then becomes unclaimed property.
Of the state of Illinois?
Well, it's not owned by the state.
Okay.
I am just the holder. Good question. No, I'm just the caretaker of it. I keep it in safekeeping until we find the individual or the heirs to the estate.
Okay.
Another example may be little Jimmy Dodge went off to Illinois State University, lived in an apartment, put the money down for deposit at the utility company. Right. He moves back to Orland Park, and little Jimmy didn't leave his forwarding address to the utility company.
So technically even my money.
It is technically your money, but the utility company couldn't find little Jimmy, so they then, 5 years, turned it over to me.
Oh, okay.
So now, I today am the holder of $1.7 billion.
That's a B,
With
billion.
a big B,
Okay.
$1 billion worth of property that belongs to millions of people out
Wow.
there or their family members, and we can't find them.
That number is much bigger than I would have assumed.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
huge. And you know, I think your earlier question, Jim, is a good point. That does not become the property of the state.
Okay.
Okay? The program we have is called iCash, where we have all of these millions of names on the database, so one can go from the comfort of their own library or from their own home computer and go to treasurer.il for Illinois,
Okay.
.gov.
Okay, that's pretty simple.
treasure.il.gov and go to the iCash tab there, and then you just, seriously, as simple as entering your name, first name, last name, and you don't have to enter a city, but it helps search it,
Right.
sort it down. And the reason I say you don't have to enter a city is like I use you as a
Yeah.
little boy as an example. If you were in a different community and didn't think about where you maybe had left something behind, so
Right.
don't do that. So you can very easily go there, treasure.il.gov,
Okay.
and go through and do the search. And I really strongly encourage people to do this, because if somebody said, well, I just did it like, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, we add new inventory
sure.
every week. And I also strongly encourage people to look under a maiden name. So,
Right, yeah,
you know,
it'll go back a ways.
Go back a ways, and a relative that maybe has passed away, if they could be the heirs to the estate.
Outstanding. So the easiest way is probably to go to the website and start there.
It is. I mean, it's
Okay.
now we can obviously, there's telephone numbers, they can call our office, but that would mean that a staff person would go to the computer and look it up for them. But, you know, some people maybe aren't as friendly with a computer, or maybe don't have a chance to get to the library to check it out. But very simple. Treasure.il.gov, go to the website, look it up. And you know, can I ask one thing too?
Go.
I want some help.
Okay.
Because I want to give this money back.
It's a 1.7 billion with
Yeah.
a B is a lot of money.
I came into office in 2011, and as I told you in the onset of your show here, I'm a business guy, so I like to market and I like to promote and so forth. So in 2011, my first year in office, we returned $101 million. The year before was $82 million. So we had a 22% increase over previous year.
Right.
First time ever over $100 million. Okay, now my business
That's $100 million is a lot of money.
now it kicks in again, so I said, all right, 2012, let's matrix this whole thing out. How can we outdo last year? 2012, we returned $129 million. Now think about that. $129 million went back into the purses and wallets of people of Illinois that didn't even know they had it coming.
money, right?
That's better than a federal economic stimulus package.
We'll take that any day. So, and thank you for that. And one of the things that, as the chairman of the technology committee, I will make sure that we work with your staff to get some links on our websites, which we're about to rebuild, to make it a lot easier for our residents.
That would be really great if you could do that. You just link to it, and it's a terrific program, and we want to get it back in people's hands.
That works. Dan, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate the time.
Great to be back in Orland Park. Thank
Great.
you very much.
No
Jeff.
problem. Thank you.
We'll be right back with more of the discussion with State Treasurer Dan Rutherford and Trustee Brad O'Halloran.
Hi, I'm Trustee Kathy Fenton, and you're watching Orland Park Television.
Hi, welcome back to Orland Park in Focus. I'm Trustee Brad O'Halloran, and I'm also the chairman of the Finance Committee for the Village of Orland Park. And we're continuing our discussion today with Treasurer Dan Rutherford of the state of Illinois. Dan, welcome again.
Thank you, Brad. It's nice to be on the air with you.
Nice to be here with you as well.
Thank you.
Dan, I wanted to talk a little bit about Orland Park's finances. I've been a trustee now for 20 years in the Village of Orland Park and the finance chair for the last 4 years. During that entire 20 years, we've balanced our budget every year. We've set aside adequate reserves, and we've been able to maintain a AA+ rating. And I just wanted to get your take as you travel around the entire state on, you know, where does that put us kind of in the state from a standpoint of a municipality?
You know, I have been all around the state, Brad, and I will tell you that's outstanding. Now, there are a few other jewels out there that do this, but not that many as far as communities. And if I could just be raw about all this, you put that compared to where this whole thing has been driven for the state of Illinois, you are absolute superstars. And, you know, and one of the things I'm not sure that your viewers may understand how hard your job was. And that of the mayor and your colleagues and the president pro tem of the council and so forth. But it isn't just managing your budget, which has to be done. it isn't just watching the borrowing that you do, which has to be done, but the other consequence you have in being a local unit of government is you have what's the effect called the halo effect, which is the splashback in layman's terms on the state's bond ratings and how that could negatively impact you. So you having been able to manage the way you have to have it in such a good stead and good standing in light of the states having such a financial problem is even that much more admirable. There are rating agencies that will look at sovereign government's debt, so sovereign governments such as Orland Park, state of Illinois. Now, I've only been the state treasurer 2 years now, and so a lot of what I have to manage is working with this governor and this General Assembly on getting their financial house in order, similar to what you have done. But the rating agencies are Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's, and they rate similar to what a credit score would be for an individual if they would go to a bank to get a home mortgage.
So like a FICO score.
Right, or for a car loan. The worse the credit rating, the worse the credit score, the higher your interest is. So keep up the good job.
So from our perspective, we're getting that best rate, and that's reflecting certainly to the savings that we can pass on to our taxpayers.
Right, and there are. And I don't want to go and put projects on the table for this tape, but again, for our viewers' benefit, there are times when communities need to borrow money for long-term capital projects, whether it's for street improvements or bridge and capital improvements. And if it is planned debt with a appropriate cash flow, the revenue stream to pay for it as well, and then a good interest rate, that's how you pay for 25 and 30-year projects. So having a good credit rating like you do have is extremely good and does benefit the taxpayers directly here in this community.
And one of the things you alluded to, Dan, was certainly that we're not isolated here in Orland Park. We're part of a larger continuum of the state of Illinois. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on your feelings as you're the steward of the money for the state of Illinois? So there's only certain things that you can do in your capacity. But what's your opinion of the situation that we read in the papers every single day?
And here, let me start off. I am a cheerleader for Illinois. I love my state. Illinois has got terrific sports teams, recreation, communities, educational facilities, job training programs. It's a great, great, great state. It's got a few problems, and some of those problems come directly out of Springfield, out of the government that we have going on right now. And when we have such an unfunded liability in our public pension systems, that when 2 years ago the income tax increase was raised here, the income tax rate was raised here in our state, literally all of that new money went to just pay for the increased payments in the state pensions. And here's a fact that I don't want to depress you, but in January 2011, the outstanding bills owed to vendors of Illinois, whether they were school districts or the company that delivers bread to the state penitentiaries or community-based mental health centers based services, was $8.5 billion. 2 years later, income tax increase, the outstanding bills to our vendors was $9 billion.
So we're not making up any ground.
No, that's sad. And the absolute reason is because they haven't addressed the state public pension issue in Springfield. One more fact, and I want to scare all your viewers here, because I think this shows how good a job you're doing here in Orland Park and how good your team and your finance committee is doing, how good you're doing. Because right now, the projected revenue growth for the state of Illinois, new revenue without raising rates, okay? Increased sales tax revenue, gaming revenue, video poker, things that I'm not sure we should be basing our future economy on, but I mean, it's coming in, is $600 million for the next fiscal year. $600 million projected new revenue for fiscal 14. The projected increased payment for the state public pension system is $945 million. Right now, you're $345 million off. That's what's driving the credit rating for this state, and that's why what you're doing is so admirable.
So not only are we not keeping pace, but it's almost like it's dragging us under. Continuing to drag us under.
Exactly. So when you got $600 million coming in and $945 obligation, you can see that it's not going to work. And the state's budget right now is looking to cut hundreds of millions of dollars out of education funding. And I don't agree with that. When the governor proposed that, I didn't really jump on him hard, because Right now, there's hardly any other recourse than cutting draconianly into the state budget because we haven't dealt with that $945 million increase in state public pensions. That, of anything that happens in the state capitol between when we're taping this and they adjourn at the end of May, that is the number one issue because this affects you.
Absolutely.
It affects you as a person. It affects your community, its residents. It affects your village and all of the resources.
Well, certainly, Dan, I agree with you that the state has some challenges.
Yeah.
And that's why we need good leadership, just like yours, with the Treasurer's Office and keeping an eye on all of the funds of the state. And we certainly appreciate that you came out to Orland Park today, visited with us, and brought everyone up to speed on what some of those challenges may be.
You know what I think I'm going to do before I leave Orland Park? I'm going to have them fill my tank with gas so we can leave you some motor fuel tax, and maybe I'll buy a product and leave you some sales tax.
Well, we've got a great mall right up the street.
Well,
it has all kinds of good stuff.
It's a little early to do Christmas shopping, but I'll spend a little money in town. You guys,
we'll welcome you back at the Christmas time. That's for sure.
All right.
Hey, thanks so much, Dan.
Absolutely.
Great seeing you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Treasurer Dan Rutherford, my fellow trustee James Dodge, and everyone who's watching today for watching Orland Park in Focus. Thanks very much and have a great day.